It's 6:03 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of minutes from August and September. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? And if so, I would entertain a motion to approve either or both.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Okay, our first item of old business is a look back at the HBCU HSI fair. Doreen, would you mind giving us an update?
So the event was an absolute success. We were expecting 200 and I think about 15 kids. 317 showed up. But you know what? I am okay with that. I have to say, it was standing room only in the learning sessions. When I say our children soaked up that information, they were silent. You could hear a pin drop. They were taking notes. They were invested. And I actually got emails, and I'm still receiving emails from the presenters and from the college reps stating that they thought it was such an amazing event and that they want to come back because our children were just so wonderful. So thank you to everyone.
And a huge thanks to you. That's pretty major. Thank you. Next up is community engagement support, a funds request form. We still need to approve that.
Yeah, I can start that conversation. So at our last meeting, and in the previous meeting, the past couple, we've had some conversation about using TRC funds to support community endeavors, community groups that are coming, right? And after discussion, Raz developed a form, and then that was shared around, and then I think the thought is that we would approve that form as a means of moving forward with future requests from organizations who are seeking TRC funds. And just a point of personal privilege, I did not have capacity really to view the form and then scan it and sign it, and then it just really felt like an extra step that I just did not have capacity for. And so I began to think a little bit about what it is that we really want that form to do. I think we had enough information that would have been on the form in our conversation, and we voted unanimously. And so I'm wondering, how can that not be enough?
Yes, I agree because we had a lot of data and everything on it. We discussed it and all. But if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong here. The idea was to use this as a trial run for other such proposals where we might not have all of that data and information, and we would need it. And then we'd say, why don't we have a form? So I think we kind of understood that this was sort of a dry run kind of a thing, and that really it was just kind of pro forma, but it might not be in the future. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was the thing.
I'll just add that it will be good to have the information on that form for public record when somebody's looking back at it in 10 years. It'll just be nice to have it concise that way.
And so I guess my thought is that this is a public meeting, and that if that information is presented at a public meeting, and maybe that's the preference, that the form is sort of a backup to because the public meeting is also on record, right?
So I can say, as the person who filled out the form, I still haven't gotten the funds. So I'm not sure, right? Bills to pay, y'all, bills to pay. So I guess I was also lost a little bit with the form because I was the person requesting it was I supposed to sign it, not supposed to sign it? Yeah, it just, I agree. There was just a lot of the unknown, let's put it that way.
I'm wondering if for the remainder of our time together, December 2023, nope, 2022, um, if up until that point that maybe this is something, this is information that we use for the future of this group moving forward, suggestion lumping, that the form and sort of process and all of that kind of goes there. But for the October, November, and December meetings, perhaps it's any requests need to be at one of our public meetings, whether that's one of us or someone else that comes to us would do that here. I mean, we have a setup for that. We have minutes being taken. I propose that as a way of moving forward.
We could include it as an addendum in our final report and treat it as a pilot recommendation moving forward. It might, we haven't drafted this recommendation, but we might consider as a possible recommendation in that report that the borough maintain a program like this and that they could use this form as a basis for managing requests for support.
Yeah, it may not even be necessary in the moving forward. For us, part of it was so that we could review some of these requests in advance, if I'm not mistaken. You know, so we're not just seeing everything live. Like we're presenting some opportunities and trying to think on the spot. Um, so might be valid for a few more months for this body, but it may also not be necessary going forward.
I think to that point, we actually talked about this in the August meeting, and we talked about it again at the September meeting. So we did have some time to think about it. I don't know. Maybe this doesn't have to be perfect for, again, 2 more months. Maybe this is again just something that we learn, and maybe that's an addendum to that recommendation or incorporated in that moving forward recommendation that's in development. Any other conversation on the form or funds requests or anything like that? Yeah, so, right. You didn't get your, right. And so that's a process thing that I'll ask Mayor Schultz to help us out with. Yeah. Oh, the email that I sent requesting the funds, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Huh?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Question.
Working on it.
Question, because I actually don't remember, but it probably wasn't there. Was there anything on the form, like a check the box, funds allocated, funds not allocated? Was there anything like that? There's a record. I don't remember seeing it, but I didn't want to say it wasn't there.
Well, Raz, you might want to speak to this, but yes, there's a reason for rejection box.
Okay. But is there anything confirming that the funds were actually allocated, actually dispensed
No,
on the form?
that's something I could add. If
I'm
we
not sure if that's any value. I just was curious.
Yeah, because I included a reason for rejection for individuals if for some reason one of us said no, but not an actual
Right.
like finality.
Yeah.
So just so we're aware for this body, there's actually another form that we have to submit for funds from the borough. So this is in this instance would have been my second form to give information process and then take, do we want this attached to that form or no? I mean, I think those are things that we all kind of need to think through. But I just, for us, I'm not in favor of adding an extra step in form.
Let me ask, because again, I don't know, but when we say this could be an addendum to something else, is that to suggest that someone else or another body or group might find the information on the form valuable when actually dispensing the funds, or is that just sort of like a, like I think like Rhonda was saying, like a record in, what did we do with X and X dollars? Oh, it went to this, blah blah blah.
When I suggested it be included as an addendum in the report,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that it might also go along with a recommendation to maintain a program like this one that we piloted. And so then that way, borough staff wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. They'd already have this form that Raz worked on that they could either use as is or modify slightly.
Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, so thank you. I wasn't looking at it that way. I was looking at it like they have their form and they will always have their form. So that's a helpful perspective. Anyone else? Cool. Next item on the agenda is we thought we were going to have some community presentations. Commissioner Sturkey had mentioned that there were going to be some folks here to present.
Right.
Um,
If I
Is that you?
remember, it was supposed to be some folks from, I think, the Bible Way Church of God in Christ, with respect to what they were doing with their agenda for, I think, supporting children and helping children for the rest of the year, something like that. I think it was.
yeah, that sounds
From the
familiar
minutes.
about Summer
Yeah.
Slide.
Yeah.
Are any of those people present? Nope. All right, so, and I believe the health and wellness recommendations are also in development.
They are in development, and I'm thinking, when we organized our different baskets of content for the final report, we knew at that time that there was already a lot of overlap. So one thing that we can benefit from now that we're making our way to our last topic is we can look back at what we did before and see some threads that we might pull through and flag also as health and wellness recommendations. I'm thinking, for instance, the recommendations concerning trees being planted in lower income neighborhoods. That's not only about beautification and about lowering energy bills, it's also a health and wellness initiative. So we might flag in our report that some of the things that we've already done fit in multiple categories. And we could also use this time to brainstorm a little bit together about the health and wellness category. Do we think it should be a standalone category? Are there enough big recommendations out there for us to research at this point?
I don't remember when I was reviewing the meetings if there was a specific meeting about health and wellness, and then I don't know if there was a working group set up. Was there? Or are we actually, is this something that we still need to do?
That's kind of a question on the table. We had a lot of changes in membership, and we are trying to determine if that group is still kind of working, or have we kind of distributed the tasks that were initially assigned into other groups, or should we designate some members to do some research between now and the next meeting to make some more specific recommendations around health and wellness?
I say that it is an extremely important category to have on its own in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Yes, I concur. Recently, there's been a lot of social media discussions because the nation basically informally declared that we have a mental health crisis in the United States. And I know some of the not-for-profits were indicating that they had not received any, even though there was this declaration, there was no additional funds that came with it. So there may be a push, to do more in that particular area. So yeah, important for us to look at, I think.
I actually have the assignments in front of me, and we left that one blank. And I think we did that to see if what you said would happen. Because I also think there's a way that health and wellness are tied into um, everything that we've talked about, commerce, right?
Everything,
Um,
right?
that workforce development piece. I mean, I think it's all related to health and wellness. I think, again, as we look at that, recommend that basket for what the future looks like, I think there is likely some conversation that could and maybe should be had um, about housing near former manufacturing sites and any tests or studies or things like that that were done to rambling and could be rescued right now would be okay.
Well, I do think that we might want to put our heads together and think, what are some reasonable big swings the borough could make? Like, what are some things that are under the borough's control? Because dealing with like brownfield sites is a pretty big endeavor that involves a lot of different parties. So, if we made recommendations around that, I think we'd be biting off a lot of material that would involve interacting with groups beyond just the borough. But are there some kind of therapeutic things that we could invest in that are just in the borough, like uh, public art engagement, things that might be ways that we can express ourselves?
Emily, I um, collaboration with other partners is necessary for the borough to be doing. They can't just. It's disingenuous, I guess, to think that you could make these changes without collaboration widely, even even when you're talking about minor things. Um, yeah, that's just my view.
I think that if I was just jotting down like Partnership for Better Health, we could certainly reach out to them. Um, I know that we could reach out to UPMC or other places to come into whether it's any community organization, do some blood pressure checks, give information sessions, etc. I think the more that we kind of make things available, the better it is for those in Carlisle. Um, so that could be a start.
If I may, yeah, on both of those, I think you're spot on, both of those comments. Um, and this is a personal observation so far since I've been back in Carlisle is there is a lot of salami slicing that goes on with these sort of social programs and the like. And my concern is just I don't have a lot of facts, but just a little bit of discussion is that we spend a lot of time not stepping on each other. And that means I'm talking about these organizations that are dedicated to these sorts of things because of the inability or we haven't collaborated enough is what I'm trying to get to. So there are a lot of efforts that go on, but folks don't know about them, and then they're not proffered collectively. So people are running in all kinds of directions and all well-meaning, but one thing this body might consider is being a source for getting the data together, the information together, and making it widely available, not just doing the thing, but making what's available uh, uh, more public. There's more public knowledge to what is happening. A lot of these nonprofits that I've spoken with don't dedicate a lot of funds to public messaging and communication because of where the funds come from and how they have to be allocated. So they do their best. The social media and the like helps, but certainly it would seem like when we become aware of these things, we're a mouthpiece, we're a source for, well, we're not doing it, but though they are, or this is going to happen there, that sort of thing. And then I think I know I'm amazed already on how much is actually going on and how little the public knows about it. There's small pockets that know, and when you talk to the nonprofits, all well-meaning, they say, hey, look, we don't really have funds for this sort of thing. We do it by word of mouth, maybe a little bit of social media and that sort of thing. Maybe we could have a role in that area and sort of amplifying their voices for activities along the health and wellness line that are actually already ongoing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like what I had spoken to at the last meeting, the Partnership for Better Health put on that health equity series. Um, I'd be happy to just take an action of reaching out to Marcellus Taylor, I believe. The
Sold.
done. Mom,
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I had nothing. He's just gonna.
I just got
I
really excited.
don't mean to suggest that the borough shouldn't be collaborating with other parties. I think they should, and I'm positive they are and have been. I just mean that to suggest that I think people are really looking for action and for movement. And when you assign actions, and one of the actions is collaborate with long list of collaborators, what's the end result? Collaboration is really vague. So we want to make sure we're balancing those kinds of suggestions with here's something sort of short term and concrete that people can see as a
That's true.
proof of concept.
So along those lines, one of the things that I was watching the council meeting, I think it was October 4th, organizations were coming forward asking for $2,500. They all had that same amount because it's probably the maximum, I guess. And I noticed amongst those people that they were possibilities of collaboration, not just with each other who are presenting, but even with the educational and organizations that exist that are state level or Cumberland County level or whatever. Um, uh, and they even spoke about that they were going to each of the counties or boroughs asking for the same amount of maximum money that they could. So it was just interesting as a learner to see that. And there's a lot I don't know, I understand, but so the specific proposal that I have, it was related to the organization that talks about history, puts up plaques in the town. One of the things that that Carlisle Borough could specifically do is task them with uh, making their uh, engagement, I guess, the history that they engage with include other people who also contributed here in Carlisle Borough and different perspectives. So not celebrating Civil War all the time or not commemorating it, but other things that are relevant for the current times and make that part of the reason you will receive funding if you do this, this, and this.
So I just had some, just come back to the health and wellness piece. In that, I think in this way, because of the manufacturing that we've had in this town, I don't think that that's an outrageous or that it's collaboration unto itself. I think identifying places where we would like to see some studies done or think that results should be more publicly. I think that black and brown people in this community could have been subject to some significant environmental racism that dates back, and I think that that's part of the work of this commission is these historical wrongs. So what sort of projects or knowledge did the borough ever have with regard to any one of these large manufacturing sites that are there or not there? How has that, like, I think that that's all part of, right, like Dr. Taylor, the health equity, right, like this is all a part of that. And I think that this body, I think that we would be missing something significant if we did not acknowledge that in our recommendations to the borough in some way, whether it's health and wellness or community and neighborhood, or, but I feel like that's a thing. I think we missed something by council not receiving that from us.
I 100% agree. When I first moved back here to Pennsylvania, I was told by my children's doctors that The asthma rate here alone is extremely high for children. A lot of kids in Carlisle have asthma, and a lot of it has to do with the history, of course, but also the amount of truck traffic that goes through the Carlisle borough. It's amazing. And so I 100% support what you said about that.
Go ahead.
I'm positive that there are many victims of environmental racism in the borough, and I have no objection to acknowledging that here or in any kind of report. But when it comes to recommendations, what concretely is our ask? So are we thinking about something like perhaps a road diet, or what are some just encouraging us to think between now and next meeting about what are some things in the borough's sphere of influence that can speak to that.
And just one thought: what if we engage the Climate Action Council as well? I'm just thinking climate justice. This may be some overlap, so a good collaborative opportunity.
And as far as a specific ask, the ask is that it be studied and investigated, and then I'm looking at what that future body, right? Like, this is a piece of that recommendation that would fit in to maybe, if we're not thinking of some sort of enforceable body moving forward, if we are thinking that way, this is something that they could enforce, right? So, and I don't think we have to walk away tonight with that completely cleaned up, but I think um, to not include some of that, I think would be a miss. And can receive that with the caveat that that recommendation and all recommendations should be to a point, right? That there's a thing that we are looking to have done. Period.
Yes,
Got that, Nicole?
agreed.
Any, anything else on health and wellness? Fantastic. Rhonda, you're up.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Uh, so these are the draft recommendations for Carlisle Borough Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I'm putting them forward now um, with the expectation that they'll be discussed and perhaps edited, and we'll see where that goes. So it's forethought. Forethought meaning both meanings of that as you hear it. So Anin Bojo in Dinaway Maganadok, Migwandish Nakas Nigik Dodam, Gichemnessing Donjaba, Mechanicsburg and Da, Nimishomis Gi Jabwe, Iwade, Jingwak, Kino, Ama de Wigoming, and Nagashike Jabwe Iwade, Shawanaga, Gikino, Ama de Wigamig. And so what I'm saying is a traditional greeting. I'm Ojibwe, and this is Ojibwe language I'm speaking. I'm a learner. I'm also a teacher of the language. And what I was saying was, hello, all my relatives. And these relatives include you, includes all of creation. Those are all my relatives, water and lands and seen and unseen. Miigwan is my name, and I'm Otter Clan. I just want to point out something that's just unusual for me. I think it's that flag over there. I don't know if it's here anymore. But in these emblems, there's actually, it's called the Otter Pattern. It kind of shocked me that it existed here. So in a lot of beadwork and a lot of quilt work, there's a certain pattern that's made, and it was in the emblem that was on the flag. So I don't know, that's just an aside, but I'm actually from a place that's known as Christian Island. It's also known as Beausoleil First Nation, and it's in Ojibwe we call it Gachimnasing, which translates to the Big Island. The Big Island. It's on Georgian Bay, which is in Canada, but our history brings us to these areas all the way down to Chesapeake Bay as trading went on. This is pre-contact trading. We would come here to these lands and do ceremony and trade different medicines and different items that weren't available in the Great Lakes area. We'd bring things that weren't available to here, exchange. So here I am. I live in Mechanicsburg. My grandfather went to Shingwalk residential school. He and his brother went there, and my grandfather ran away after being there for a little bit of time, but his brother wasn't able to go with him, and we do not know what happened to his brother. It's a mystery till now, and that's one of the reasons I became interested in Carlisle at all, because I was doing investigations trying to find his brother using digital archives and so on, and Carlisle's archive came up. And so there's a long story, I won't tell it, but that's my mother also was she was in Shawnigat, which is a First Nation in Canada. It's a reserve, and she was put in the resident. It's a not resident. It's the day school. They call it a day school. Also, with the idea of when you go there, if you had any language, you weren't allowed to speak it, things like that. Just my introduction. Just say this. Please forgive me for any of my spoken thoughts that are too powerful with ignorance or truth. Right? So these are just my ideas. First one, collaborate with the U.S. Army War College and others to remove barriers to repatriation per the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. So it's known as NAGPRA for short, and I put a footnote to if you want to read the legislation, if you're not aware of it. And this will apply to graves currently located within the Carlisle Barracks and those in other locations across Cumberland County, including on privately held land. And there are reasons for that. You can ask questions if you want, but I'll just go on to the second point. Investigate and publish a list of religious orders historically or currently involved in supporting the Carlisle Indian Industrial School's assimilation mandate. Assure these entities, whether through charitable or other avenues, do not receive funding for initiatives related to Indigenous matters. Assure the funding is given directly to projects that originate from Indigenous initiatives. So what I'm thinking there is the nations themselves. And then the next point, again, there are reasons for that, and I'll answer questions if they come forward. The third point is support Indigenous language revitalization efforts. Privilege those languages that were specifically targeted for destruction as one of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School mandates. So there were specific nations. They came from as far away as Alaska and in Canada and even Hawaii, and before Hawaii was part of the U.S. and all across the U.S. Children were brought here, and they were not allowed to use their language or any aspects of their culture, and that was purposeful and carried out. So while looking for ways to fund, consider the complicity of land-grant universities such as Penn State in relocation of entire nations and its continued support to the residential school movement over its 150-year operation across the U.S. and Canada. So, and then the fourth point is research, consult, and collaborate toward realization of land backs actions. And then I just give an example. It's restoration of lands and waters, showcase projects, or compensation toward language revitalization targeted to descendant families and nations of Carlisle Indian School. And a lot of these recommendations are put forward with the thought that Carlisle internationally has a reputation of being associated with the residential school system now, and it's a reputation that I think will carry forward just as it is if action isn't done to move it in a more positive direction. So, miigwech bizindawiek. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
If there are any questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer.
I would say yes, thank you as well. And that was a lot to think about. So I'll hold any questions I have until I get a little smarter. So they're smart questions, but I will have some. So I wrote some notes, and I think if we, as long as we get your recommendations, draft recommendations in our notes, we do a little work. 'Cause I know some work has been done in Carlisle, and work has been done at the War College and the like, but I must say I'm not as up on these kinds of what still could be done and what's within the scope of the borough or borough council that they might be able to take on with respect to those items. Thanks.
So I actually have to credit Jerry or Mr. Sturkey, who's not here tonight, for bringing my attention to a product, and I pulled it up here on my computer. So Wise Markets on their Diet Birch beer products, they have. Do you see it?
Thank you.
They have actually an Indigenous person in a canoe. Oops, I'm so sorry. So if you have your computer right now and you look up Wise Markets, Wise Diet Birch Beer. And Wise, actually, while we were talking, I kind of looked it up to see where it's located. It's not in Carlisle. Don't worry, you can take a breath. Okay. But it is in, I believe, Sunbury, Pennsylvania. And one of the things that I would love for this body to do is perhaps put a letter together and, and say, and again, I know this is not Carlisle, but it's still,
Yeah.
I think, something that we as a body could speak about and say, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, miigwech. Yeah, I totally am with you. I have a few other examples of that.
Okay.
So I like where you're going with that for sure. If as a body, that could be letters could go out.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
And again, that's Mr. Sturkey. I didn't even notice it until he brought it to my attention.
Member Tamlin Watts has given us some really incredible things to consider. We did not initially designate the Carlisle Indian Industrial School as a basket or a topic area for our report because we tended to look at topics in an ahistorical way. But I wonder how this commission feels in response to her very valid point that when you think of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the thing that looms over it in terms of truth and reconciliation is the existence of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. And would it be appropriate for us to have a dedicated section in our report that builds on some of these recommendations and identifies some specific things that the borough can do?
Yes.
I think it would be.
Yes.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
Please, no.
I think it would be highly appropriate. And I do want, as Lou has said, I'd like to just take a little more time with these, but
I shared
really,
it. Was everybody able to see it? It was like 5 minutes before I left the house. So.
I'll get caught up. I'm a little behind, but I did see that. We did look at the graphic, and I think, this cuts across a number of areas, including commerce and business, in my view. So, I certainly would like more time to look at it. I'm glad you brought this to my attention. I really don't know the problem. It's like, why is that symbology there? Is there a story behind it? Is it a positive story? Is it a negative story? What is it? I think we need to learn quite a bit more. So appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Could I just get some clarification on your recommendation number 2? The investigate and publish a list of religious orders historically or currently involved in supporting the Carlisle Indian Industrial School assimilation mandate. Are you looking for, so I hear religious orders and I think houses of worship, for faith, bodies of faith, people of those sorts of groups. Is that
Yeah. So historically, a lot of the churches that existed in the area, in the Cumberland Valley area, even in Harrisburg and what was like on the other side of the river, they had certain interactions with the school, and all their interactions continued the mandate, disallowing them to use their culture and language, reinforced non-Indigenous um, thought as far as regards to their um, relationship with creation. Was imposing this view of our relationship with God that was Eurocentric. You know that and perhaps still continue to do so. You know, in ways that they go about doing what it is that they do and feel that they need to do. So, but beyond that, the main idea for this is to really investigate, catalog, and make it a matter of public record with the historical um, realities, and make it apparent also who's doing things that perhaps are continuing the assimilation process, because that still is happening. So, have a look. Where's it coming from? One of the examples I have that it's an unpopular view, but I'm very strong in this. The blanket exercise is put on by a group of, it's between 8 and 12 religious organizations. They originated it, and they still receive a licensing fee for anybody who uses that learning modality. So that fits in this category. Whether it's happening here, I don't know. I'd like it to be investigated, and if it is, I would like it to be stopped.
thank you.
This commission is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, so something we might think about in terms of refining our ideas and making recommendations is we might want to become a leading community in addressing these matters, and telling the truth is step one, but then also what is a way that we can take responsibility and engage in dialogue? Might there be a borough-led signage campaign where any institutions that were involved in this kind of behavior might choose to acknowledge that in some kind of solemn and serious way, and then be involved in a public education project where, as you're walking through town and you see those signs, it's that group's decision to take responsibility for telling the truth about their historical involvement, and then having the conversation unfold in a different way as you walk through the streets of our town. Borough, sorry, I never get used to saying borough.
Yes.
Thanks again, Rhonda. No other discussion on Indigenous Peoples Day. That's what I wrote here, but I wish I hadn't. Thank you for your recommendations. Next item on the agenda under new business is the future of this commission. So we had talked a little bit about the that recommendation, sort of the moving forward. What happens after?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Can I have just a moment on the old business before we move on? And some commentary about old business. Not anything listed here, but something to follow up on the mayor's comments in the last meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay, before we get into the new business, at the mayor's urging at the last meeting, I met with this Miss Hillary Lyle. She's director of the Strategic initiatives at the South Central Workforce Development Board. The mayor suggested that we talk with her, and this was with respect to learning more about ourselves and where we are on the commerce and business area, the demographic challenges and the like. So I did meet with her, and I want to publicly thank her for spending so much time with me and providing a wealth of quantitative data. So in the past, I've mentioned in previous meetings that we don't have a lot of we have a lot of qualitative data. We don't have a lot of quantitative data. I was searching for it. Well, there's a wealth of it at the South Central Workforce Development Board. So she briefed me on the role of the board, and we don't have to go through that now. But their focus is on job seekers and employers. So this goes back to my remit on the bin for commerce and business. So I just wanted to kind of clean that up a little bit. So thank you, Mayor, for putting us in touch with her. She also removed some of the cobwebs about the complex relationships between Penn State government, Department of Labor, and CareerLink, which was also part of a previous discussion in our last meeting. So I think I understand that a little bit more. I'll pass on some of that data. There's some information that I want to add to the draft recommendations for business and commerce as well, that I think is quite useful because they're a tremendous resource. I'm learning this already. So just a couple of things that for data points I'd like to make, and then I can move on. The fastest growing populations in Carlisle are Asian and non-Hispanic Black. We had some discussion that we had Cumberland County, but we weren't sure what's happening in Carlisle. So everything I'll be providing here is specific to the 17013 zip code. Okay. From 2016 to 2021, jobs within that zip code declined by 3.5%. And this is well short of the national average, 5.3% short. So the top three employers in Carlisle last year were in the restaurant and eating establishment area, colleges and universities and professional schools, and general freight trucking. So those are the folks that are hiring, the folks that we're talking about trying to assist. Accommodation and food services are our lowest wage earning jobs. So when you put those two things together, I think that's also enlightening. The fastest growing jobs in the zip code are healthcare and social assistance. No real surprise there, but we have factual data now to reinforce that. Remember, I mentioned the ESC's Nurse Assistant Program is a huge program that is likely going to get more attention, and this data goes to that. And lastly, the most common sought after job skill by employers in Carlisle is communication. So English as a second language, understanding how to express oneself and the like. And that's and we have data for that as well. So Hillary volunteered to give us a briefing, provide us more data if there were more questions at some point, to give us a better sense of Carlisle's specifics with respect to the folks we're trying to assist. And this includes the businesses and the employers. So we can think about that. And if we want to take her up on that offer, she's certainly willing to come in. She can express it a lot better. You can draw incorrect conclusions from data, as you well know. So I took the easy stuff and gave you the easy stuff. But she and her organization have tremendous insight. And once again, thanks for that recommendation. That's all.
Thanks for that, Lou. And yeah, we did need to circle back there, so I appreciate it. And I apologize that I didn't have some space on here. I think one of the other things that I'm interested in from the workforce, from the WIB, is their funding and how that is out. So like if there's we had talked about a youth employment program. So if they receive funding from the federal government and if they're passed through, who does that get passed to, and how can folks in the community access that?
Yes, we had a long discussion on that one, and we decided we would have to talk about that later because we were past the 2-hour point in our discussion. But yeah, that is I don't want to say a morass, but it is a complex process. But the board does fund internships. It does fund training to employers to enable their current employees to advance within the company, even within that company. They call it incumbent employee training. And there are monies that are allotted for that. So, and it just goes on and on. So it was very eye opening. And I just wanted to bring that to our group so we understood. I'll send you some data. I'll send you our contact information. But we do know a lot. We, the borough, do know a lot more about ourselves than I originally believed.
This is really helpful, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about how these recommendations are coming together with that information. I happened to be out Alexander Spring Road and noticed that it looks like the Career Link building is now empty. Um,
Right, they are moving to. I think I might have. Maybe I didn't mention it in the last meeting. To the. I'm dating myself. I almost called it the MJ Mall. The.
that's awful because I know where it was.
What is the
You
store
talking about
there
the
now?
Plaza, Bonton,
No, the other.
Walmart?
Yes, they are moving to a facility there, which they believe is more accessible than the other facility. We talked about meeting people where they are, where they live. So they're trying to get a little bit closer. So there's more accessibility in their view. So they're probably there by now, or they're about to open there.
I like the way that's shaken out. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments on the?
Lou, would Hillary be open to getting an email from me? Because I have specific data questions, like about the categories and so on.
Yes, I
Would she?
think she would. To help to not overwhelm her, I think she did this during some downtime for us. I'll send you the data that she's passed, which is a lot of spreadsheet stuff. But she may be able to just answer basic questions by calling through the data herself, rather than having you go through all this data and then come up with questions. So.
Yeah.
We'll have a dialogue offline. But yes, I think she's
Great.
more than willing to communicate and share this information because she understands we're trying to make it actionable so we can
Yeah.
have this data inform our priority recommendations as we go forward.
Yeah, great.
Thanks again, Lou. Anyone else on that? All right. Now, maybe the next item on the agenda is the future of the commission, and we had talked about this being a basket, or a set or a single recommendation, and I think we were going to work together on that. I don't think, but prior to this, we hadn't really forecasted our coming attractions in terms of recommendations, but I wanted to just make it a matter of public record, right? That the future of this group isn't necessarily something that gets decided in a silo or by, right? So I don't envision this as being something that is, it's a little different than the other recommendations, right? In the way that I think they should best come about. So I'm just saying that maybe we may want to start thinking about this in a different way, and maybe a larger sort of brainstorm type of thing, and maybe it's conversation that happens one to one. We'll just be talking about it. And I think I invite us all in that process.
I do have a question, and I just because I don't know. I did watch the evolution of the Climate Action Committee, which I think they're a committee now, but they weren't always a committee. Does the borough have a progression where we start as a group or a task force, and then we become a commission, and then if maybe you could grow up and become a committee or something? Is there some sort of setup there that's already established within the borough?
There is not, and so how the Climate Action Commission
turned into a committee was simply a discussion within the commission and then within our steering committee that's made up of me, Councilor Hicks, Deputy Mayor Landis, and borough staff. And it made sense from Councilor Hicks' perspective that it was no longer a commission the way it had been, sort of investigating and then making a recommendation. It was now more sort of an ongoing committee. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something you could sort of follow that process as, or think about following that process as you move ahead.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for that question. Go ahead. Does anybody else have anything else on that?
I just wanted to make sure that I understand, as it stands, December 31st, 2022, this holds, right?
Yes.
And a report is given to council?
Yes.
And, okay. So then, when you're talking about moving forward, what are the ideas that have been discussed that I may have missed?
I don't think we've really discussed any ideas. I don't think.
I would agree that the conversation is still very open. What we kind of tossed around without any deep commitment to it is, might our recommendations include a permanent version of this body? So right now there are 6 of us doing this work together and thinking about these issues and thinking about ways that the borough might be able to take action. And when this group dissolves, it will fall back on a very lean borough staff. It's very lean operations here. And so we have to think about who would perform that work. Might we recommend that this commission become a permanent fixture in the borough so that there are always folks who are willing to perform this work together? Might we make a recommendation that involves the commitment of more resources, such as an office of belonging or a chief diversity officer kind of role? Might we come up with some kind of hybrid of those options? So does that seem fair about what's been kind of floated so far?
Yeah,
Yes.
that helps a lot.
Yes.
Thanks.
Commissioner Callahan just jogged something loose for me in the discussions we have had about the Climate Action Commission and the committee, because we had a very long report from that commission recommending a number of initiatives to be implemented. So what the committee is now doing is steering us forward in the implementation of those recommendations, somewhat as a number of task forces that are broken down by different areas, those recommendations, and then also helping in a sort of a feedback loop with borough staff and council. So I wanted to put that out there too as you consider the functioning of this body or its successor.
Thank you. Anything else on that? Go ahead with some updates from Europe.
Okay. I'm going to take the second thing that would have been a good, the discussion about the future of the commission would have been a good segue. Just to first note that we will be having the first of a series of town hall meetings of council and me at Memorial Park on October 17th at 5:30. There will be food there too for those that helps draw you out. And just really very open. We'll discuss a number of upcoming issues that the borough is facing, and then open it up for what folks in that neighborhood would like to discuss. Very sort of open-ended. Next is the November meeting of this commission. Presently is scheduled for November 14th. that is the Monday that we typically on council begin our budget discussions. Because of I think a quirk in the calendar, your meetings are usually before our council, the Monday before our council meetings later in the week. November, it's the Monday after our council meeting. And if you may want council to take some early action to move something forward on the future of this body, depending on what recommendations you see coming out of it, you may want to have this kind of, I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone. You may want to have that meeting on November 7th, prior to our council meeting, if that works for your calendars. And that'll help us out with the budget hearing scheduling also, and reduce that conflict or eliminate that conflict. So I'm throwing that out to the commission. I think it would be helpful. If you can't come to a conclusion, we can do it offline.
I'm available on the 7th.
Yeah, does anyone have a problem with November 7th?
I will be on a plane to New Orleans, but please feel free to go along without me.
It's going to be kind of tough if we're talking about the future of the group.
Yeah.
Are you thinking
On Monday 7th, the 7th, I believe.
I would say, do we move to a Tuesday? Well, no, you're probably not back Tuesday. When are you back?
Back Tuesday night, but wait,
So Wednesday.
Wednesday of that week's the earliest I can do it.
That's Wednesday the 9th.
Or the 10th or the 11th. Ooh. Yeah.
I feel like I have something on the 11th. Oh, I do. The 11th is not good for me.
Isn't it
It's Veterans Day.
Veterans Day?
Also why it's not good for me.
the 9th? Looks good.
Wednesday the 9th?
I'm not critical to this body. I understand that. I'm just a liaison. That's my daughter's birthday. So I may not be here if you schedule it then.
Not the 8th, that's election day.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to pull up the borough's calendar to see what other options are maybe.
There shouldn't be anything on the 9th. That was great.
But I also think it's helpful if you're here too, as we go through that recommendation, so that we're doing and thinking about things that wouldn't make it, I don't know.
That sounds good.
Okay. How about we go to the first week?
I think this is going to be, is it going to be enough time if you do it in the first week? Because I can look at some
No.
plan B.
I think that first week of November is going to be tough because I can't really focus on this until next week. Like I can't throw myself at recommendations and conversation and working through them.
Is there any precedent for meeting on the weekends? Saturday or Sunday, daytime?
We did that in April.
Yeah, there's no obstacle to it. You've done it. Yeah, right. You've done that before.
I mean, I can do the 10th also. He's 15. He
The-
doesn't want his mom to
The 10th is council meeting.
okay.
Yeah, that's a rough week. November is a tough schedule.
These are
Okay, the 12th or the 13th
of November.
of November, that Saturday or Sunday.
I'm out of town that weekend.
The other thing I can explore then, if this, this is good because I'm trying to get sort of understand where our boundaries are here with the schedule. We typically, so we schedule our budget hearings. We schedule 2 nights, just in case the second night we need overflow from long discussions. We may have some long discussions this year. We don't typically use that second night though. So one of the things we might be able to do is just push our budget hearings back and start the first evening would be the 15th. And then I'll have to check with our manager if we can have the overflow night scheduled on the 16th. If that is going to make it easier, because I think we're kind of struggling to find another date here. I see a lot of head nods.
Yeah, the 14th would, I mean, that's our regular scheduled
Right.
meeting, and that would work for me.
Okay, I'll explore that and then just send an email out to the commission, and if that's an issue, then we can work on the schedule offline. Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
Come to the point of our meeting where we will have some public comment. Community members are asked to give their name and address for the record and to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Anyone on Zoom for public comment? Thank you. Anyone present for public comment? Thank you. Announcements and future meeting schedule. I feel like we just did that, and it was fun for me. I don't know about y'all.
Can I ask a question real quick?
You can ask it. You always.
Just in relation to Ms. Jerry Fitzsimmons, asking if they can promote us through the Dickinson Law School. Any opposition to that?
Dickinson Law.
Dickinson Law, sorry.
So- No.
Okay, cool. I'm right back. Thank you.
She was actually here.
This is it. Okay.
That was her.
I'm glad I didn't say that. She was.
Any other questions? Announcements? No, this was great. All right, so what is it? 7:10. This meeting is adjourned.